Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 21 of Deep in the Novo. I'm Ryan Novozinsky, joined here, as always, by my co-host, Sudeep Tumma, the sports editor for the Okali. And today we're going to be breaking down that game that just happened this past weekend. You guys all know it. You guys all may or may not love it. Bedlam every year, it seems like, is from here on out is going to be a OU win, right? It seriously is looking like that, especially lately, especially historically in this rivalry too, for sure. As OU beat OSU 41-13 last night in Bedlam. But yeah, Sudeep, what did you see from this game? I mean, we all know how up and down down it was, and there were some bright spots here and there, but overall, from a holistic standpoint, what do you think of this game?
I mean, just on a very vanilla standpoint, from the very beginning, it was obviously OU dominated. They took control. They played defense almost not better, but they played defense better than they normally do, and they proved that they are a legitimate defense, and they're not a defense the way OSU's been the entire season, just stopping teams in their tracks. But OU's defense is definitely doing enough to couple what should be, by the end of the year, one of the best offenses in the country.
Yeah, totally. And starting with that offense, I mean, Spencer Rattler, a lot of things he did during this game, whether it was on the run, whether it was through the air, obviously, and just smart decision-making. I mean, this kid's going to be legit. He already is pretty much legit, and he's proving that time and time again throughout this season. I mean, the beginning, a lot of people said that this was going to, this is a down season for OSU. It still in many cases is. 2 losses, obviously. That program down there, the way they're able to have this national prowess every year is by building up, all these successful, I guess if you want to call them dynasties. They really do have a great way of doing that. And especially the quarterback position, Spencer Rattler is the real deal. And what were you able to see from him the other day?
I love this talent coming in, just natural arm talent. He's a very natural pocket passer. He's got great vision, great footwork, mechanics, and then his arm is just tantalizing. Yeah. Honestly, you see him throw passes, and his mechanics. Like I said, mechanics are great, and they're just so accurate. There's so much arm strength, such great zip, accuracy, ball placement. It's all the tools that you want from a passer. And coming into the game, you knew that he was, a solid runner. I would say an underrated runner, like we talked about before, a Baker Mayfield type runner, who can do enough where you have to acknowledge the fact that this guy can run. But at the same time, he's not Kyler Murray, right? He's not Jalen Hurts. He's not going to run you over. He's not going to run around you. He's not a Lamar Jackson. He's not that. But that's fine. Yeah. Because his passing ability is elite. He's been one of the best quarterbacks in the nation. He would be in a much stronger contention for Heisman if not for the early stumbles by OU. I mean, not just OU, by him as well, right? I mean, obviously we have to acknowledge that. But he just always had that sort of natural talent. And for me, coming into the game, what scares me more than the pocket passes is when he's outside the pocket. Right. And OSU did a pretty good job, I think, of containing him from doing that. But it was just great play calling by Lincoln Riley. And, I mean, the two go hand in hand. Lincoln Riley is great in all aspects. As a play caller, scheming up, game planning, but also developing quarterbacks. You can't just have great schemes. You also need to develop your talent. And Lincoln Riley is elite in both aspects. Just look at the last 4 quarterbacks, right? Each one has been Heisman or almost Heisman, which is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, now with Spencer Rattler, and it's one of those things, but this offense was definitely clicking.
Yeah, they killed it, right? And you talk about the development. I mean, the way this guy's able to develop these quarterbacks is something of just poetry in motion, right? And also these wide receivers too. Sure. I mean, year in and year out, I don't want this to come off as the OU appreciation show, but I mean, you really do have to give them some respect. I know some people might not like that, some OSU fans might not like that, but my goodness, give credit where credit's due. I mean, OU has built a talented squad, and I think it was Skip Bayless. I don't think we should go ahead and keep recycling Skip Bayless takes, but he said on Twitter, he was like, this OU team looks college football playoff ready. And I agree with him, right? Take away those 2 losses, obviously, and you can't do that, right? But this is a team that you think maybe be able to make some noise in that college football playoff, but obviously that's not going to happen with the 2 losses. But I mean, it's just an interesting thought experiment, and it's an interesting thing to see how this OU team has progressed throughout the season.
Yeah, and with those 2 losses, I doubt they make the playoffs, but the sentiment still holds.
Sure.
They're just that talented and that good. And offense, definitely they're talented. But for this game, you can't just throw talent at a defense like OSU and hope it sticks. Yeah. That's not what works. What worked here was amazing game planning. Each and every week, I always wondered which team is going to figure out a way to find a weakness in OSU's defense and exploit it. The one that really came closest, and the one thing that I kept seeing and almost worrying about at times of, okay, this is where their weak point is. And again, let me say this it's not that what I'm about to talk about is weak. It's that the other guys are so good, and that makes no sense. Let me explain. It's the man-to-man coverage with Rodarius Williams, especially Jarek Bernard Converse. The two guys on the outside, they stick like glue. They are legitimate shutdown corners. But in the inside, you got Tanner McAllister. You got in the slot corners, right? That's where I'm pointing at. That's where you got a bunch of guys shuffling in. Tanner McAllister, Malcolm Rodriguez, Trey Sterling, right? You got so many different guys. All guys who are very solid in coverage. But to go from Rodarius Williams on the outside to Tanner McAllister, there's obviously a drop off. And again, no discredit to Tanner McAllister, who's obviously a very good player, but you're not Rodarius Williams, right? And that's where you found some of these teams find some success. That's how West Virginia kept chewing up yards, the crossing routes, the slants. And that was part of game planning, and that's why there were some bigger plays there. But my point is that's really where I've seen some of the weakness. But coming to OU, I really wondered, because here's the other thing. OU could have easily exploited that as well, because you look at the talent they have across the board. You talk about the wide receivers. As we all know, this is not the same Marquise Brown, CeeDee Lamb. There's not that alpha number one as there normally is. Marvin Mims has been the closest one to that. But overall, that same feel hasn't been there. But at the same time, they have 5-6 guys who are all very, very solid. And you could shuffle guys at different places. But what I found really interesting here was that Lincoln Riley really found the hole in the sideline-to-sideline speed. And I always said this, OSU has so much sideline-to-sideline speed, you try to throw it that way and they can really stop you. Kansas State did a little bit of it where you saw it a little bit just kind of expose them. But what you really saw with Lincoln Riley was figuring out how to get these guys in traffic and get guys wide open. I compare this most to Ohio State versus Michigan 2018. Dwayne Haskins. If you remember correctly, both these teams were top of the Big Ten. Both look like national, college football playoff contenders. But it came there, and I don't remember the score, but I felt like it was 60-10. It was probably something close to that. It was. And it all happened because not just because Dwayne Haskins was good, it's because the Ohio State coaching staff, they figured out the weakness. What Michigan was so good at was man-to-man defense. And how do you get around that? You run crossing routes for days. Those guys just can't keep up, right? Especially in the slot. And you throw that little 2-yard, 5-yard pass, runs out and goes for long touchdowns. And that happened again and again. Now, you can't simply just do that against Oklahoma State when you have Amen in the middle or Malcolm in the middle. Guys like good covers, linebackers, you throw those crossing routes, people pick up, right? These safeties on the outside, you're dropping down a Trey Sterling, a Colby Harrell-Peel, even Malcolm Rodriguez in coverage, Trace Ford. These guys are very fast. So if you just do those simple crossing routes, it's not going to work. So what Lincoln Riley did was cover it up so much. First, establishing the run game, then using the play-action game, read options, little things, and then running guys throughout traffic. Then there were simple ones where you weren't even running them behind the offensive line while you're play action. You were just running them to the side. And you just know where your receivers are and where they're running routes. The guy who's covering that tight end who's coming across the field, he's going to get jumbled up, right? Whether it's Thomas Harper, Colby Harrell-Peel, whoever. And that happened time and time again. And that was one of the main things. Then when OSU had... And that's the thing. That's what happens when you play man-to-man coverage. Here's the thing. I'm not sitting here saying, don't play man-to-man coverage. But that's one of the things you have to deal with. Because here's the thing. If you can play man-to-man coverage every single play and just blitz your guys or just send 4 in and throw more in coverage, you have such an advantage. Teams play zone defense because they can't play man. I mean, think about it. If you have Rodarius Williams and all these guys and you're able to stick each and every play, why wouldn't you?
Of course.
Zone coverage only works until the blitz, until the pass rush gets there, right? You can't cover the whole field. If you could, then then how can anyone do anything, right? But that's what the advantage of man coverage is. But also the unwanted, I keep on liability, I can't think of the right word. It's
true.
Right. It's one of those things where that's the downside almost, where if you come up against an offensive mind like a Lincoln Riley, if they can find the right way to exploit it, which Lincoln Riley did with all those east-west movement, all that sideline-to-sideline stuff, that's how you break it down.
And this is factored in too with the, like you said, the talent of these receivers, right? Where it's not you have that number one guy, you have that Tylan Wallace on their team. No, it's Marvin Mims, it's Theo Weiss, it's Charleston Rambo, it's Drake Stoops out there, right? You have all these different guys that are able to, with these sort of crossing routes, with some of these mesh concepts, with some of these other schemes that they're throwing out there for OU, you have differing attacks, right? There was no receiver the other day that had more than 3 receptions on the day, right?
Sure.
And they it's a balance in attack. The run game gets established too, right? When you have this sort of point of attack. Excuse me. And it's poetry in motion. I've used that term already this podcast, but there's no other way to describe this Lincoln Riley Oklahoma offense. I mean, it's just getting better and better.
Exactly. I mean, like I said, this was an OSU defense that came in with such high regard, not just as a defense, but as a Big 12 defense that was doing this. It's almost ridiculous. But like I said, the man-to-man coverage, it's an unwanted commodity that you end up having. It's one of those things you have to deal with, but it's of the smallest degree. But I'll say this also, I think OSU's defense, not to keep ripping on them, I mean, they did as good a job as you could. And consider the fact that OU's offense had so much advantage, right? When OSU's offense couldn't get drives going, then they had to punt the ball away, or they just turn the ball over, and you get much easier field position for OU. But that obviously, like I keep saying, defense and offense play hand in hand. And for OU, they got easier situations at times, but they also did drive down the field and did move ridiculously.
Sure.
The Romider Stevenson and the run game, but having to play defense time and time again when your quarterback's either not, when you're sitting there like, oh, if we even get 20 yards, that's success. That's a difficult place to almost be in at times, and that's not exactly what's happening. But clearly, this is not the same explosive offense it has been in years. And it's Spencer Sanders. It's just time and time again. It's looking more like promise than. And I'll say this too. He's put together great games before. Injuries keep happening. O-line injuries are killing it. Even when Spencer's healthy, he's dealing with that. But that's the reality of what this OSU offense is right now with the O-line problems. Even with the great job Charlie Dickey's done putting this team together and getting it to whatever they can be, it's hard to replace 5, 6, 7 guys down. It's tough. And
it's time to stop, I guess, waiting, right? Because you're always, some people always say, right, like, well, Sanders still going to develop, right? He's still going to keep going and going and going. But I wrote about this last night. I was thinking, it's a thing of, this was supposed to be the season. This was supposed to be the time where they were supposed to beat OU, right? Because all the playing cards came together. It was Chuba coming back. It was the defense. It was Spencer Sanders developing. All these different things. Injuries happen, sure. Offensive line injuries happen, but man, this team's got to be more adaptable. I'd say, just from my assessment, and it's easier said than done. Sure, 100%. But my goodness, Charlie Dickey is busting his butt every week to get this offensive line as a cohesive unit. And in some cases, he's doing a great job, all things considered. But my goodness, man, this offensive line was a true concern yesterday and in many weeks this season.
Yeah, when Tevin Jenkins goes down, it's really difficult because, I'd say they have been, really adaptable in terms of when you lose 5 guys from your offensive line. That's after losing 2 starters to the NFL. Yeah. That's a difficult time. And guys go in and out with injuries here and there. But think about 5 guys. And now you're playing tackles and guards, some of them who were probably going to be third strings to begin the year. Right. And sometimes those third strings have to come in, like a Preston Wilson or just here and there, right? Different guys who probably shouldn't be playing, but have to. Some guys shouldn't even backups, but they're starting. It's a difficult situation. And then Tevin Jenkins goes down. It's more and more difficult. It's like I said, they've been so good. Charlie Dickey's been doing it, but what you got to do when you're quarterback, when you're whatever, maintain an identity and approach it, right? If you want to be a run-first team, you want to play ball control, do it. Don't take your shots when you need to. Play that sort of thing. Use the run. Run with Spencer Sanders on 3rd and 8 if you want to, because there's a chance he gets it and punt it. But stick to that and do it. And don't get yourself in tough situations. And that's how you keep the ball moving. That's how you sustain it. And then let your defense do what your defense does. It's just finding the right identity, I guess. Yeah,
because you looked at this game, right? Going into this, obviously this is on the defense a little bit too. A whole heck of a lot, actually, not just a little bit. You thought, all of our score predictions in the paper the other day, it was like, in the 20s, in the 30s. Like, that is not a bedlam game, right? And then you see the result here, and it's a lopsided affair, 41-13. It just doesn't look attractive at all. And the defense gave up a lot of points, but usually when the defense gives up a lot of points for or against OU in these Bedlam matchups, you're always expecting that offense to put up a whole heck of a lot of points. But, the defense wasn't able to bail them out this time. So this offense, we need more maturation from them. We need more of that, that elements from them. Whether it's more consistency, from a turnovers perspective or just more consistency overall. I just can't believe we're sitting here and saying this like that, a couple weeks into the season, we are still looking at, with Chuba coming back this season, right? With Tylen coming back this season, with Spencer Sanders, progressing along with his career. And we're still looking at this, and the offense is frankly a problem right now. It is.
No, it is 100%. I agree with you, and that's a difficult thing. But I mean, like you said, 41 points. It looks really bad. We talked about this yesterday or Saturday rather.
Yeah.
the stat sheet will look bad. The yards will look bad. The numbers will look bad, and the yards are for real. But that 41 points is a little bit deceiving.
I agree,
because you just look at the offensive side and look at these yardage numbers: -4, 1 yard; 75, 0. Then you skip a couple, 1, -4, 34, 12, 30. It's just, you're not putting a lot together. Obviously, there are drives, right? Like, you go on 76 yards, 44, 54, 76. You score some drives, you sustain some drives, but the majority of it is just bad because not only are you not putting together anything, you're letting the momentum seep into these defense. You're energizing them. Then you're punting the ball away to an explosive OU offense. This OSU defense is legit. And Lincoln Riley found the weakness, but still at times, especially in the second quarter, third quarter, this defense was starting to make some stops, and you can't expect them to stop 3 and out every single play. Even if OU goes 30 yards and punts it away, that's a success because Lincoln Riley and this offense are so good. And when really good defenses like OSU's go up against offenses like OU, you're not going to win unless your defense is going to do all it can. And sure, they might have more pride and think they want to completely shut it down. And that's great. But at the same time, the reality is that's not happening, right? You need your offense to start sustaining.
Of course.
You need your offense to start scoring. And if that can't come up, that's why 41 points goes up. Because you might stop them in probably 20, 30 points, right in that range. But then they score some more because the offense throws a pick. Or, I mean, obviously the pick was tough, but the offense throws a pick. You give them bad field position. These type of things happen, and it just becomes a very, very difficult thing all around.
Yeah, and going to that point, right? There was something you mentioned in there about how in the second and third quarter things got a little bit better for that defense, right? So let's talk about some of these things because obviously with this game, with 41-13, on the surface level, it looks like there's all negative takeaways from here. But there's some positives here too. There's some things to look forward to for this OSU team based off this past week's performance. First of all, we'll talk about the defense. Then I want to get into Chuba Hubbard a little bit because while, this is not Chuba Hubbard's best game by any stretch of the imagination, 44 yards on 8 carries, there was still moments in there, and you and I were noticing this last night, where you sort of get that great balance, that great poise from him, and you get some of these scenarios where he's able to pick up 5-6 yards on a play where it looked like he was done in the backfield.
Sure.
So we'll start there actually. Let's start with Chuba Hubbard. What were you able to see from him last night, and that sort of gave you confidence going forward?
I thought I said this at one point to you. This is the type of thing you really have to appreciate. Just look at the O-line, look at the holes, and then look at when you have Shane Ellingworth in or Spencer Sanders that defenses aren't fearing. That defenses aren't only fearing, they're stacking the box.
Right.
That's what's happening. That's the effect of that. And even though they're not stacking the box, they're playing hard on those strong side, those weak side runs. They're sending a guy down with no remorse.
Right.
They don't care if it's play action. They're there to sell out and stop Chuba Hubbard. Then more than that, it's not even about the safeties coming down, linebackers. At the point of attack, these offensive linemen cannot create the same holes. Every so often, you see good penetration, you see a good hole, and that's where you saw Chuba Hubbard scamper through for that 28-yard run.
Yes.
But beside that, there's not a lot of holes for him to run through. But you see the vision, you see the little cutbacks, you see the poise, the patience. That's what I loved about him in 2019. His patience. He was able to just bop back like Le'Veon Bell-esque and then burst through for 80 yards. But those holes were there. The offense was dynamic. You had a dual-threat quarterback and one that wasn't afraid to throw it down the field, and that's where you saw the complexion of the defense change. But you don't see that anymore. But it's confidence because he's still the same guy. I still think he was hurt because only 8 carries. I mean, there wasn't a lot there. I mean, I think he must have been hurt or something, right? It was difficult all around for sure.
Yeah,
I do think he did play well to whatever degree he could.
yeah, totally. And it's one of those situations where, I mean, we've talked. There's been a couple games like this with Chuba Hubbard,
Right.
Where if like I hate to use the word eye test, but if you look at the eye test, right,
Sure.
you can tell there's some scenarios there where you see the spurts of last season. It's just not all there because it's not the complete package.
Yeah, and I think he's the same player. I really do.
Oh, I agree.
Minus the injury, I think he's 100% the same player. It's just you're not going to get the same production because of just the offensive line and the offense as a whole. When you had Shane Ellingworth in, yeah, you took your shots here and there, but overall, teams knew what was going to happen and how those things were, what those passes were. The playbook was shrunk down. They knew the mentality with Mike Gundy and what it was with Shane Ellingworth. They wanted to play ball control. And it's just a whole different – it's very difficult for any running back. But, man, Chuba, what's great, if nothing else, if even his production is not good, his leadership is doesn't complain and just keeps working, is a leader on the sideline even when he's not playing. You saw it on TV against Kansas State. It's just the qualities of a great teammate, great leader, and someone who's going to be a great running back.
100%. But sticking in that backfield, I mean, the elephant in the room, there is one right now. We need to talk about this quarterback situation that happened last night. I mean, about what was it, about halfway through the game or so, or probably a little bit less than that. Shane Illingworth comes in for Spencer Sanders. It's still up in the air, I believe, if it was a coaching decision or an injury type of deal. But I mean, Spencer Sanders went down for quite a bit there, and Shane Illingworth had to come in and fill that role, and ended up going 5 for 21. I mean, what happened right there? How would you evaluate both quarterbacks, in this situation?
I mean, Spencer was definitely struggling to begin with, but also, again, has no space to work with, and no space for anything else to develop. Because Oklahoma really honed in on Tylan Wallace. You saw it just about every snap. As soon as the ball snapped, they're rolling the guys to the right side of the field. Get Tylan Wallace, who's on the right side usually. Get him doubled up, bracket coverage almost every single play. Still, he had a few plays here and there, but overall, it was that. Then that was the first progression most of the time, or he would come back to it. But the guys are already in his face like a snap of a finger later.
Right.
These pass rushers, Ronnie Perkins, it was difficult from the very beginning. I thought he played fine. I mean, it's hard to evaluate in the beginning because of how quickly he went out. But I have to lean toward, again, this is just me speculating, that it was in fact a coaching decision.
I agree.
More than just medical, because Spencer, we always talk about, it's more promise than it is truthful production and wins. And normally, if a guy goes out like that, you put in your backup. And even though Shane Ellingworth is impressive at times, you usually still go back to your starter. Of
course.
But I don't know if in Mike Gundy's mind, or for most people, Spencer Sanders has earned the treatment of that, where he's been like that. There's times where you question, okay, yeah, is he going to pull Spencer because he's throwing too many picks? Even a game where he's throwing 400 yards, he's turning the ball over 2-3 times. You know what I'm saying?
People look at that as one of his worst games.
Right.
Remember that Texas game? Yeah.
Right, exactly. And that's one of those things that sticks in your mind. And that's why I think it was a coaching decision. And just look at the context. Shane Ellingworth came in for one drive, put together a nice touchdown drive. The offense flowed. And in a game where it's so important to win, and it's just a momentum thing sometimes. You're down, 21-0. You put 7 points up real quick. Things look better. The offense is clicking better. Irrespective of the fact that Spencer Sanders had gotten hurt, the offense just wasn't clicking before. So, and again, it's not like you're going from Peyton Manning to some fool, right? You're going from Spencer Sanders, who has promise, but isn't like Brandon Weeden, or hasn't cemented himself, right? Even Mason Rudolph, anyone. So you're going from that, you go to Shane Ellingworth. I understand the move, right? You stick with that until it doesn't work. And again, I think both guys played well enough considering the situation because of the offensive line. But let's start with Shane Ellingworth. I think in all those moments he was there, the first drive was impressive to me because it wasn't even designed to go to Logan Carter. You saw it was Tylan Wallace, but even on that play, you saw the impact of Tylan Wallace. The guy's dragged toward him. Logan Carter goes to the corner for a wide open. And for a guy, we know how Shane Ellingworth's been treated. We know that he's been treated to play this conservative playbook, ball control, those sort of things. And in spite of that, he made a great read, understanding, oh wait, my first target's covered. Let me break my eyes and see a guy wide open. That's difficult. That's not always the thing. But everything we've seen from Shane Ellingworth so far, poise, maturity, pocket presence, all these qualities of veteran quarterbacks who are true freshmen. And I love that aspect. But at times his accuracy was definitely off, and he was throwing some low balls, some bad balls. But at times there wasn't much there.
Yeah.
That he wasn't getting much, whether it was down with coverage or whether it was in the pocket. But, you know, I just love his mechanics. And I love what he's going to be. I just don't think he's ready right yet. And you don't want to throw him in the fire with this sort of offensive line. But you saw when Spencer came back. He just played so well. They started they started pushing it down the field. Then he ran a little bit with his legs. You see these little bit things. And you know that guy is still the guy as long as your offensive line can make it do. And I wonder in that drive how much of OU kind of played off coverage or, let them pick up yards and bleed out the clock because OU was up obviously a bunch. But overall, the offense definitely looked better with Spencer. And that's the sort of thing. They could have scored in the last drive. I say they went for it on fourth down. You come away with no points, doesn't look great. But it's just one of those things. And the offense definitely looked in control. You have your sort of quarterback. And I think that's kind of where you go with it. But it's so hard because of how bad the offensive line is, and it struggles that way, and receivers don't always get open. It's just different things you have to deal with, and it becomes a very difficult situation.
Going back to Spencer, I think there's nothing that describes him more perfectly than that Texas game, than having 400 yards, all those turnovers.
Yeah.
He's a great player, but my goodness, there are some fatal flaws in there, right? There's flaws in there. There's glaring flaws, not necessarily fatal yet, but there's in some cases, scenario by scenario, where they can be considered those fatal flaws with these turnovers and sort of with I want to call it maybe overconfidence or over adulation for in some of these scenarios. I think Gundy said it on the pregame radio show where he was talking about potentially that Illingworth could come in for Sanders at some point, and this was sort of a precursor to this game, right? This was way before that. So I mean, maybe there's something with that. Maybe there's just little confidence in Sanders. I don't know what it is, but like you said, when he came back in, it was a whole heck of a lot better. And I'm gonna guess, if I'm a betting man, obviously I don't even think it's a controversy that he's gonna be starting against Texas Tech next week. But I mean, it's just going forward. I think it's a definite question to be had because of what Gundy thinks about him. I don't know what that answer would be.
Yeah, I mean, when I heard that too, I was kind of wondering, I wonder if he said that for Spencer's benefit, or if that was the truth, then maybe it was the truth. We'll never know for sure, right? But at the same time, I keep saying this. Spencer Sanders is a gamer, and he is a competitive guy. But at the same time, he wouldn't be the first quarterback who's failed with so much talent because of the turnovers. Jameis Winston, Jay Cutler, right? There's a long list of quarterbacks left and right in every level of the game. But because those turnovers can be so much, like you could throw 50 touchdowns in a year, but those turnovers can really bite you and lose games. You're right. It's not just about raw talent. At times it's coming together. And with Spencer Sanders, I don't know what it is. I mean, to me, it looks like it's not overconfidence, but it looks like this guy is a gamer and he's so competitive and wants to make each and every single play, which is admirable. But you got to learn when to throttle it back. Now, I'll say this also. We saw a lot more of that before Kansas State. Kansas State, I loved it because there was times where he would be running the sideline before he would try to run and maybe get hurt or get 1 yard, but didn't or force a pass. That's the most likely thing he would used to do. He used to force a pass down the field. Good chance it gets picked, but it's not. But there's a slight chance it gets open for 40, 30 yards, right?
Sure.
But now, I mean, when in Kansas State, there was about 3 plays I can circle where he's running out. He's scrambling out of the pocket. Instead of forcing it on the run, he throws it away. Instead of running for trying to juke out a guy, take a hard hit, he slides down. And there's other ones where he just throws it away. Smart plays. That's what I really liked in the Kansas State game, and that's why things look better. But in this game, again, I didn't think he had those moments of, okay, this is not good.
Yeah.
I mean, even the pick, right? It was just swat at the line. It was unlucky. One of those type of things. But it's going to be interesting to see how he puts it together all together. Because, I mean, that's the main thing. That's the missing piece. The maturity, the poise, and the understanding. And it's hard to throttle back that gamer mentality, the competitiveness.
Sure.
You love that because he wants to make so many plays and he wants to be accountable and he wants to win. But how do you find the fine balance between that and, okay, this may make us lose?
Exactly, man. Exactly, because that can definitely hamper your performance if you're Spencer Sanders and obviously the OSU Cowboys, who are going to have to move forward after this loss, after this 41-13 loss in this Bedlam matchup. Next week they have Texas Tech, the Texas Tech Red Raiders. So they're going to be playing Alan Bowman and company, and we'll see how that game goes. But we'll have all that coverage for you on Ocali.com. Tune in. Tune into that and more, and all of our written coverage at Ocali.com, at Ocali Sports on Twitter, and at Ocali on Twitter. Thank you for listening. Once again, I'm Ryan Novozinsky, joined here as always by Sudeep Tumma. Have a great day.